Hey Gerald, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me once again.
No worries. So one question for you today, Gerald, that was uh, inspired by the fertile ground that is the Antiquity Sessions Facebook group, the Antiquity Songwriters Facebook group. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So Gerald, what does it mean? And actually, I've got the Wikipedia open just here as well, so I'm going to be referencing to that. But what does it mean to be a musician, Gerald?
Now,
Let's start with historically and then let's go to now.
I mean, I can only relate it to my life and what, how I came up being a musician. And it's a lot different than it is nowadays because I had the opportunity to play a lot. I mean, I started playing with bands when I was 12 and 13 years old. And even if I was only doing, playing at the school or something like that, I was playing. And today's musicians don't have those kinds of opportunities very much. A lot of clubs are closed, a lot of venues are closed. A great many bars don't have live music anymore. So what does it mean to be a musician? It's a lot easier for people like myself and my peers because we're already established. My phone doesn't ring a lot anymore, but that's because I don't want it to ring anymore. I've made a conscious decision that I'm sort of started weaning myself out of the business 10 or 15 years ago. And, but nowadays, let's say a kid coming out of high school who's thinking of being a musician better have another plan, or he better be multi-instrumental. He better be developing a lot more and a wider spectrum of his skills, because if you think you're just going to make it as a guitarist, or a guitarist who doesn't sing, or a guitarist who can't play in an ensemble, then you're out of luck, because they're just that if there's no venues, what do you do? If there's no clubs, what do you do? What are your opportunities? I mean, nowadays, for most established musicians like me, living here in New York, your opportunities are maybe the occasional bar mitzvah during the week, and maybe a wedding or two on the weekend. And even that nowadays is asking a lot, because most of those bands are, they have the cream of the crop in them. And they're not interested in some kid who's 18 years old, doesn't have any chops, might not read very well, hasn't had the experience of playing in those kinds of atmospheres, because playing in a wedding band is not at all like going and doing a concert at a college. It's about entertaining. It's about knowing how to back singers. You have to be very well rounded. Or you won't get those kinds of gigs. They're just. I have never seen any 20-year-olds in wedding bands, because those things are run pretty professionally. And that's, people would say, well, what's that? But that's really the big angle. That's what's left for a lot of musicians now. And so someone who's 18 or 19 or 20 years old better have a lot of arrows in his quiver if he wants to be a musician. A lot more arrows than I needed, because the opportunities aren't there. And always, I would say, have a plan B. Don't, and I'm saying a plan B outside of the music business, perhaps. So that you don't wind up like my peers now, who are older, trying to pay a mortgage, trying to put their kids through college. you're not going to make that. You're not going to be able to do that as today's musician. That's just out of the picture for you. You know, those opportunities are not there.
Fair enough. Okay. So how has the definition of a, first of all, let me refer to the Wikipedia page. A musician is a person who plays a musical instrument or is musically talented. Anyone who composes, conducts, or performs music may be referred to as a musician. A musician who plays a musical instrument is also known as an instrumentalist. Okay, here we go. Musicians can specialize in any musical style, and some musicians play in a variety of different styles depending on cultures and background. Examples of a musician's possible skills include performing, conducting, singing, rapping, producing, composing, arranging, and the orchestration of music. Thoughts?
I would take rapping out of there.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I mean, that's a textbook version of it, but it's basically what I said. I mean, you've got to be more well-rounded nowadays.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know,
fair enough.
If you're not able to do a little bit of all of those, I mean, no one's expecting you to be a conductor and a musician all at once, but it doesn't hurt. But I mean, all that does is confirm what I said, that you have to be more well-rounded. You know?
I mean, I suppose, though, it is more realistic these days to be able to have multiple arrows in your quiver, because the process of learning these days is debatably more accessible and possibly even faster, in terms of, not obviously, you know, there's only one that, you know, going out and getting your chops as a live musician is one thing, or you can't replicate that.
But that is the thing, okay?
Sure.
That is a big component that's missing for a lot of these kids that are coming up, because, as I've mentioned to you before, you don't get to be a musician by sitting on the couch playing scales. That's not where you learn to be a musician. The rubber meets the road on the stage. And that's where you learn to be a musician. Playing with other players, learning how to play in an ensemble, you know, understanding what your place is in that ensemble.
So has the meaning changed for, not for you? For you, it hasn't changed, but for the public in general, or in your observation, do you see the meaning of musician, has it changed?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there was a certain respect for musicians when I was growing up in the music business. I think that's kind of, it hasn't disappeared, but it's not the same thing. I think that a lot of people, the public in general, doesn't take musicians seriously. You know, it's
just, I mean, you
some of them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. You know, I always refer back to. I mean, I quit my day job a few years ago, and my boss asked me why, and I said I'm going to pursue a career in music, and he laughed in my face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, would he have laughed in my face 40 years before that?
No, he'd probably been jealous.
Yeah. Well, maybe he was actually jealous, but you never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if I don't have children, but if I had a kid that said to me, I want to be a musician, I might try and talk him out of it. Well, not so much talk him out of it, but
rationalize.
Try and make him see that you need something else, because, you know, the amount of people that are really, really successful in the music business it gets slimmer and slimmer and slimmer every year, you know.
But you only have to be one of those people, you know. At the same time, I think, in my experience, I mean, successful musicians today are successful way beyond their abilities as a musician.
Well, we have to define success here. Okay.
For me, the way that I mean that is someone who is continuously continuously building on their thing to basically a full-time capacity?
Well,
someone who isn't just doing it on the weekends, you know. For me, yeah, sorry.
You know, there are different levels of musicians, and we have, you know, that I think a lot of people just don't understand. You know, there's the sideman, which was what I was for most of my life. Okay. And it's what most of my friends and peers all basically were, sidemen. Now, there's a distinct difference between sideman and somebody who's writing music and wants to get his music out there. You know, I mean, for a lot of my career, I didn't give two shits about writing music, you know, or getting an album out there or doing any of that stuff. All I thought about was getting gigs and making money, you know. And so that, to me, in my career, I said I was successful because I made a living at it and I could pay my rent and put some money in the bank. You know,
that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but for a lot of kids now, it's this starry-eyed, they're going to sign an album. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Those things don't exist anymore. I mean, they do, but not on the level that it did in the 70s and 80s. You know, it's just, look, record companies aren't interested in musicians. They're not interested in groups. They're not interested in albums. They're just interested in one hit that they can get out there and push and make a little bit of money off. So what is success for these young kids coming up? You know, it's hard to define that for them. I mean, I don't think a lot of them know what they want either. So what is being a musician? You know. And I listen, a lot of the younger people that I know who are players already have figured out that they need to have something else. They already know that.
Interesting.
You know, a lot of them realize that horse left the barn a long time ago. They don't, you know, you know, defining success for them is not that. For a lot of them, it's just that they want to play. And even that's harder now. You know, there's a young man in this building, my building, and he's a great guitarist. He's 23, 24, really good guitarist. I mean, outstanding. A couple more years, he could be a world-class guitarist. But he doesn't have the interest. He said, he's very smart about it. He said, what's out there for me as a guitarist? Nothing. He said, I love doing it. You know, I love getting out and playing, but, you know, I have no interest in pursuing it. And that's, you know, I think that's okay, but I also think there's got to be people who want to go out there and take a chance anyway. There has to be. So people have to redefine, you know, it's redefining itself every year, every couple of years, you know. The people have to look and try and sense which way the wind is blowing. I think more than anything else. I think, you know, getting your chops and being on the stage, just it's very difficult. You know, when a lot of these kids only have 1, maybe 2 gigs a month if they're lucky. You know. So they get their chops by practicing with one another, and that's all they do. They practice for a month for 1 gig where they play 1 set. You know, it's disheartening.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think this is something that we could actually talk about over a few different videos. But is there anything else that you kind of want to say about that?
Well, I think, you know, I think that a lot of young musicians have to create their own opportunities. They have to be their own manager and talent agent, and, you know, they have to go out and figure things out and connect and, you know, go to places where they can play and try and get their foot in the door. And, It's all part of being a musician now. It's being a lot more innovative about, not so much about playing, but about being able to play, period.
Yeah. I suppose there's more, you have to be more enterprising, more entrepreneurial.
Yeah. I think you have to have more of a business approach to it than I did.
I mean, that's
growing up.
That's what I advise people now. I'm like, you are a business, and the moment you realize that, the sooner you can, the sooner you're going to make movements that will allow you to pursue this commercially.
Yeah. Don't get in hawk to the big music stores. That's the downfall of a lot of musicians. They get so in debt trying to build up a band, and they get wrapped up in EQ, and the next thing you know, they're into some music store for tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and if you don't have any gigs, how are you going to pay for all that stuff?
Yeah.
It's not for free, and on top of that, they're charging you 20% interest. So
yeah.
That's part of being a good businessman as a musician, saying, hey, maybe we should just rent the equipment for one night.
Fair enough. Cool. I think I'll leave it at that, Gerald.
All right.
I think maybe we should actually continue this one for the next video.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks again, Gerald, and we'll see you next time. If anyone has any questions, just leave them in the comments and everything, or in the Facebook group. All right. Cheers, Gerald.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.